Okay, the history and the importance of Indigenous Peoples Day. This presentation is given by nonprofit organization American Indian Spiritual Center, used for education, cultural restoration, and healing. All right, what is Indigenous Peoples Day? Indigenous Peoples Day is a day to honor America's first inhabitants, Indigenous peoples, First Nations, American Indians, Native Americans, Aboriginal Americans, whatever term that people have used to refer to those of us who are Indigenous. And it's used to honor the cultures of America's first inhabitants. It was proclaimed a national holiday by President Joe Biden on October the 11th, 2021. Indigenous Peoples Day is observed on the second Monday in October. Okay, so this year, October 14th, and it serves as an alternative to Columbus Day, which was made a federal holiday by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1937. And that holiday honors Christopher Columbus and his arrival in the Americas in 1492. However, it completely ignores the harsh reality felt by Indigenous peoples shortly after his arrival. The idea of an Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 at the International NGO Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, held in the United Nations office in Geneva from September 20th to the 23rd. The conference produced the first draft of what later became known as the United Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So this is a quote said by President Joseph R. Biden, says, "On Indigenous Peoples Day, our nation celebrates the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples, recognizes their inherent sovereignty, and commits to honoring the federal government's trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations. Our country was conceived on a promise of equality and opportunity for all people, a promise that, despite the extraordinary progress we have made through the years, we have never fully lived up to. That is especially true when it comes to upholding the rights and dignity of the Indigenous peoples who were here long before colonization of the Americas began. For generations, federal policies systematically sought to assimilate and displace Native people and eradicate Native cultures. Today, we recognize Indigenous peoples' resilience and strength, as well as the immeasurable positive impact that they have made on every aspect of American society. We also recommit to supporting a new, brighter future of promise and equity for tribal nations, a future grounded in tribal sovereignty and respect for the human rights of Indigenous people in the Americas and around the world." Why Indigenous Peoples Day matters. And I want to share this because I've heard discussions where, some people pretty much just don't understand why it matters or why it should even be a discussion. But to some Indigenous people, it is viewed as a time to correct false narratives, such as the story of Columbus discovering America, and to undo the glorification of colonialism and the erasure of the effects of its harsh realities on Indigenous peoples. It also provides a day for Indigenous peoples to share our stories, our unique perspectives, our experiences, our cultures with those outside of Indigenous communities, and it provides visibility to Indigenous peoples. So, for so long, if you're saying, oh, well, Indigenous peoples don't exist, or Indigenous peoples, look this way or act this way, or, whatever false narratives that are put out there, acknowledging Indigenous Peoples Day helps for us to have and share our own narrative and our own stories to correct the miseducation that's been done. So having special days such as Indigenous Peoples Day allows for Indigenous peoples all across America to be seen and heard, and it gives those outside of Indigenous communities a chance to learn. And by doing that, it gives the larger community a chance to connect with Indigenous peoples. And it also fosters a sense of understanding, respect, and to me, a sense of healing as well. So where do we go from here? Currently, into the state of Tennessee, Indigenous Peoples Day is only acknowledged in Nashville. Personally, I believe that getting Indigenous Peoples Day acknowledged statewide is something that should be done because acknowledgement is a start in healing from the country's past. So let me see here. That was my short presentation on the history of Indigenous Peoples Day. So if you see anybody talking about it, well, why does it matter? You know, what is it going to do? And things of that nature. It pretty much shows like, hey, this is why it matters. This is why it should be acknowledged. And, you know, I'm not into political or anything like that, politics or anything of that nature, but to acknowledge it statewide in the state of Tennessee, I believe would be a great step in the right direction, especially since this state does not acknowledge any like of its own Indigenous peoples that still are here, nor does it acknowledge any other Indigenous peoples that have moved into the state of Tennessee. But from acknowledgement, we can move forward. And I'm not saying that it would solve everything, but it is a step in the right direction. And so with that being said, that completes my presentation on Indigenous Peoples Day. I hope that you were able to learn and take something from it. And thank you for joining us. If you would like to donate to American Indian Spiritual Center to our mission, you can at the link below, paypal.me/AISC1. Many blessings to you all and have a great day. Goodbye.